sound too braggy or anything, but I had a really good reading month in January. In fact, I probably spoilt myself for the rest of the year because I think at least 3 of the books that I read this month I absolutely adored, and I just don't know how the rest of the year could possibly match up to that. But anyway, I'm going to talk you through the books that I read this month, so let's jump in. I'm having some issues with my dress today, and it's keeps sagging at the front. I don't know why. The first book I'm going to talk about is one that I have talked about countless times. You're probably all bored to tears of hearing me talk about it, but that is A Song of Ice and Fire. So I read the 3rd installment in this epic series. It is A Storm of Swords, Steel and Snow. So this is book 3 part 1, and this is an epic adult high fantasy series which has been immortalised, I'm sure, by the television series. This is just the next installment. I bang on about this series all the time. Each book is huge, but each book is really intricate with character and plot and politics and just all kinds of fascinating fantasy elements, and I recommend this all the time. But I'm just continuing on with my reread of this series, and this was the next one that I picked up. I gave it 5 stars. I think I will always give these books 5 stars. I feel like every time I pick them up to reread them, there is some new layer uncovered for me, and I just think they are fantastic. The next book was also a 5-star read for me, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is YA historical fantasy fiction, and it's the first book in the Winter Night trilogy, and it kind of centres around Russian folklore. So it's set in medieval Russia, and we follow the story of our protagonist Vasya, who is a young girl living out on a farmstead in remote Russia, and Vasya's mother dies and her father remarries a woman who is incredibly religious, and what happens is a clash between the old and the new. So you have the church, the priest and Vasya's stepmother trying to bring the church into the community, and then you have the existing Russian people who believe in the Russian spirits and just in Russian folklore in general. There is a little bit of a magical element to it because Vasya can actually see these Russian spirits, and so the story kind of focuses around that, but there's just so much richness and depth to this story. I wasn't really sure what to expect going in, but there was just something about this story that completely drew me in and just kept me wanting more and more and more. And I don't even think I could tell you exactly what it was that kept me coming back for more. It's not even so much the plot, just the way that the story was written, the way that Catherine Arden tells the story. I just found it so intriguing, and I just wanted to keep on picking this up. It is a beautifully told story. It's very lyrical. It's quite slow moving in terms of plot, but there is so, as I've said, there is so much richness to this story that it was definitely a 5-star read for me, and I cannot wait to continue on with this series. The next book I read is really similar in vibe to The Bear and the Nightingale, in that it also is about a clash between the old and the new, the old being traditional folklore and beliefs, the new being the arrival of the church, and that is The Good People by Hannah Kent. This is set in 1820s rural Ireland, and we follow the story of Nora, who at the very beginning of this book loses her husband very suddenly and is left a widow with her grandson, and things begin to go wrong in the village where Nora lives, and people, because they are still very superstitious, begin to blame Nora's grandson. Now Nora's grandson can't speak, he can't walk, he can't do anything for himself, and so the people of the village begin to accuse him of being a changeling or having been taken by the good people. And the seeds sort of get planted in Nora's head because she is going through an immense period of grief and she feels very much adrift. And so she seeks out the help of a local handywoman. Now, my understanding, and it's a very loose understanding, is that Nance, the handywoman, was the local medic, as it were. So she was the midwife and she provided people with herbs. They call it, in this book, they call it the cure. So if they had things that were wrong with them, and a lot of the people were very poor and couldn't afford a doctor, they would instead go to Nance. And Nance also kind of feeds into this idea that the boy is a changeling, and so they construe together to get rid of the changeling and bring the little boy back. And it's quite a far-fetched concept until you begin to realise that it's based on a true story and that people genuinely believed this kind of thing, and it was so ingrained and so deep-rooted in them, this whole superstition about the fair folk and the good people and the fairies, that as the story unfolds you kind of get drawn in and you think, yeah, I can completely see how you're getting swept up in this idea. And you have to kind of put aside Nora's grief and you begin to see how it is that she could genuinely believe that her grandson had been taken by the good people and was replaced by a changeling, and she wants so much to believe that. And what I thought was interesting was that after Nora's husband dies, she goes and gets the help of a serving girl called Mary, and Mary provides the outsider's view in to this story. So she is the logical one, she cares for the boy, and she is the voice of reason when Nora and Nance are trying to rid this boy of the fairy that is within him. She's the one who's kind of saying, I don't think that's right. She's the one who goes and tries to get help. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective to have. But yeah, it's just a fascinating insight into a period of history that I didn't really know that much about. I thought that it was really interesting. I definitely thought that knowing that it was based on a true story is equally fascinating, and I gave it 4 stars. I knocked a star off because it did feel like it was quite slow in places and we got a lot of the same information a lot of the time, and it could have just been a little bit more fast-paced. But yeah, another one that I really enjoyed. Then on to the Bookish Mama's pick for January, and we chose The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, and I gave this 3 stars. And to be honest, I was very disappointed with this book overall. I thought that the concept was fascinating and could have taken the book in so many interesting directions, but it just felt a little bit flat for me. So the basic premise, we begin the book in 1969. We have 4 siblings who go to see a psychic, and she basically tells them all individually the day of their death. And then we follow each sibling and their story individually, one after the other, starting with the youngest and ending with the oldest. And I enjoyed the way that Chloe Benjamin had set the story out. I think reading each character's journey gave it a sense of urgency because you wanted to keep going and you wanted to find out what was going to happen next. But in terms of the characters and their individual journeys, I just thought that they were a little bit boring. There was nothing that really grabbed my attention and captured me. There was nothing that made me feel empathy or sympathy for the characters. I just felt very detached from what I was reading. The only one that probably caught my interest the most was Clara's, and even then that was just kind of surface level, and it was disappointing because, as I said, the whole concept of does knowing the date of your death impact how you choose to live your life is really interesting, and I just felt like it could have gone so much further than it did, and I was just left feeling a little bit deflated at the end of it. I also have to add a side note in that Simon's story, which is the first sibling story you get after the introduction, contains quite graphic sexual content, which just isn't my jam at all. I was a bit disappointed really. I thought the premise was unique. There was a sense of urgency in the story, but ultimately I just thought that it was a little bit meh. The final book I'm going to mention is one that I haven't finished yet. I'm about 200 pages from the end and I'm hoping to have it finished today, and that is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This has been on and off my TBR for absolutely ages. It's YA, paranormal, fantasy, and I went into this book feeling a little bit dubious because I've seen countless booktubers talk about this, and lots of times they've said things like Maggie Stiefvater has an interesting writing style, or it's quite flowery, it's quite lyrical, it's quite difficult to get on board with, and I just am not finding that at all. I'm really enjoying the writing style. Side note, there are a lot of printing errors in this book and I'm finding that more distracting than anything else. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. There's enough mystery and intrigue that it's pulling me along and making me want to know what's going to happen next. I'm enjoying the fact that there isn't that much angst which is quite unusual in a YA story, and I'm really enjoying the way that Maggie Stiefvater is depicting the friendship between the Raven boys as well. I feel like there are layers there to be discovered and uncovered. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I am interested to see how it's going to end and what my final rating will be. But as I said, I've got about 200 pages. I have got 2 hours of gymnastics tonight as the day that I'm filming this, so I sit and watch Meg do gym for a couple of hours, so I should definitely be able to get this finished. There you go, they're the books that I read in the month of January. Do let me know if you read any of the same books. Let me know what your favourite read was from January. I always love to know. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I would love it if you would do so. Please also consider giving me the thumbs up and leaving me a comment, and I will see you all soon.